Bienvenidos sean todos a Más allá de la extracción.
Welcome everyone to Beyond Extraction, Value Chains for Critical Minerals.
To Beyond Extraction, Value Chains for Critical Minerals. A continuación tenemos un video.
Up next, we will share a video with everyone here.
De esta forma damos la
And now, we are going to welcome our facilitator, Tomás Sebrisky, who's the manager of the infrastructure and energy sector at the IDB.
to welcome you on stage.
Good morning. It's really a pleasure to be here in Asunción and welcome everyone for joining us here, both in the room and those that are connected online. I'm sure you will agree with me that the topic of this seminar couldn't be more timely. Global demand for critical minerals is accelerating rapidly, driven by energy growth and the expansion of new technologies. And the good news is that Latin America and the Caribbean are well positioned to become a cornerstone of global supply. But the real opportunity for the region goes well beyond extraction. So the central question is how mineral wealth can be transformed into jobs, innovation, skills, and long-term growth. Moving beyond a purely extractive model towards resilient and competitive value chains require deliberate choices. Sustained investment in physical and human capital, strong and credible institutions and policies that allow countries to capture more value while remaining attractive to investment in an increasingly competitive global environment. Over the last decade, the IDB Group has supported the mining sector in Latin America with more than $450 million in financing through the public sector side and over $350 million in private sector projects. In addition, we have provided technical assistance to 13 countries to support reforms, capacity building, and project development. So against this backdrop, today's discussion brings together leading experts to explore how the region can maximize the development impact of critical minerals by linking mining to productivity, industrial development, and shared prosperity. So now it's my great pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Ana Cabral. She is co-chair and CEO of Sigma Lithium, the world's 5th largest industrial mineral lithium complex, producing carbon-neutral lithium concentrate. She's also co-founder of A10 Invest, a leading venture capital boutique focused on impact investing. In 2023, she was named Mining Person of the Year by Canada's Northern Miner. So, Ana, welcome. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Well, first, I want to thank you for having me here. It's a great honor to be able to speak to IDB in its annual conference. So without further ado, I'll start with our keynote. The whole point is to create what we call a debunking of fallacies. Critical minerals are not iron ore, are not like any of the minerals we have typically dealt with before historically in the region. Why? They do not come out as ore economically, and that's the purpose of the keynote. More importantly, these conversations are taking place at a historical moment for humanity, because we are going to need a significant amount of energy. Energy demand is growing at double-digit levels, and that has not happened in many decades. And this energy demand, it goes for, in the global south, electrification of homes in places like India, and in the northern hemispheres for powering the enormous demand created by the rollout of artificial intelligence. These data centers need quite a lot of power. Utilities in the northern hemisphere demand a lot of power, and so the world will need a lot of energy of all kinds. So these minerals power this energy, increased demand in various ways. For instance, when you think about uranium, it powers nuclear plants. When you think about battery materials, it provides the infrastructure of what we call battery storage that's used to stabilize renewables that fuel some of these data centers. So essentially, global increased energy demand is essentially what's behind all these conversations. You look at Asia, you have an increased demand for the same batteries for the rollout of electric vehicles. Again, energy security. Instead of using petrol, it's using power, electric power. So energy security is the word. More interesting, the demand for these minerals, together with the demand for energy, is expected to grow double digits. So again, going back to my original point, when you think about mining as a stodgy sector that grew very little, low growth, when you think about utilities and power as stodgy sectors that grew very little, it all changed. So this is part of the purpose of the keynote, is to debunk the fallacy that now steady sectors will behave like yesterday. No, we're talking about tomorrow. Minerals, these are the future-facing minerals. Energy, this is the future-facing energy demands, meaning it has to be deployed fast. So how is that done? The only way is to build resilient, low-cost energy supply chains, which include what we call from pit to end user, whether the end user is a data center, a car, whatever there is. So you need to build the entire supply chain fast and in a resilient way. Low cost is resilience. Geographical diversity is resilience. So this is where Latin America comes into the scene. Our region, which has had historical challenges, I grew up in Latin America when in my country inflation was 80% a month. I'm an economist. It looked like the Weimar Republic. Currency didn't exist. I left my country. I came back to a country that's completely different, starting with the fact that we now have currency. So I grew up in Latin America. I spent 23 of my years in Latin America and another 15 of my best years investing in my country. So I've experienced it. These historical challenges now that have, been basically spread throughout society, they can change, they can be addressed. In other words, the region has a historical opportunity for transformation, for prosperity, for lifting the people. It's historical opportunity, it's secular opportunity. Why? We have abundant minerals, we have mineral wealth, we have human capital, we have engineers, we have infrastructure, we have abundant water, we have abundant power. There's everything in most of Latin American countries. So the long-term outcome of whether our region is going to harness the opportunity is dependent on one thing, not in politics, but in policy. Sound policy is a state staple. It survives administrations. And so policies now, and for all of you policymakers, is holding the key to the region's prosperity. Now, what are these policies? They look quite simple, but they're very hard to implement. We need a stable policy framework because it all begins with risk-taking. Very few countries in the world, in fact, no countries in the world, even Australia and Canada and the wealthiest nations, do not engage in geological risk, exploration risk. This is usually done by private sector venture capital. Now, risk, return. So you need to create an environment that fosters that, thriving what we call junior mining exploration industries. Costs zero to taxpayers. Then you create, second layer, this geological discoveries done by entrepreneurs, venture capitalists need to become developments, need to be built, and then need to become producing units, and then they need to expand. And then more and more capital is required. And as they expand, they need infrastructure. So again, investments in infrastructure, in continuing to prepare workers to follow the curve of demand for skills. More importantly, a welcoming investment for private sector, because private sector takes risk. Risk needs returns. It needs an exit strategy. And then partnerships, because none of these challenges are far too big to be tackled alone, either by private sector or by public sector. And that's where development banks have a key role. Development banks historically have played a key role in developed nations where mineral wealth was unlocked into prosperity for its people. And this is the time for Latin America, a region that historically has had everything in rule of law. So as a Brazilian, as a Latin American, nothing will make me happier and prouder than see the region come into its future, to see my country and all others not to become the countries of the future, to actually own the present, which is right here in front of us. The countries that act decisively will position themselves at the center of global supply chains. The opportunity is not regional, it is global. It is the whole world's demand for energy security, from Asia to Americas and everywhere in between. I have clients in Asia, in America, and everywhere in between. And here it is, our region. I don't need to say the obvious. All the minerals are here. None of these minerals are rare. And that's also a policy mistake that can trap policymakers. There was a fallacy years ago that lithium was rare. Well, 10 years later, with the volatility, pretty clear it's not rare. There's lithium everywhere. In fact, it's like iron ore. All of these others are not rare. What has happened then? Why are they called rare? Because not one country has looked for them for long enough to find abundant reserves, or the markets are so niche that no one looks for them in the private sector because there's no return. But that's a mistake to think that these minerals are rare. And regions that are unwelcoming will have the sadness of watching capital go elsewhere to regions or countries that are welcoming. So, more importantly, what we see then is LATAM not yet participating in global supply chains with a proportional share because of these historical challenges we've had with our own identities of, can we access capital? Do we have welcoming capital markets? Do we have policy frameworks that enable risk? And even sadder, you see high-cost jurisdictions attracting more capital than LATAM simply because of stability. So the opportunity is to become these global industrial pillars of global supply chains by simply creating appropriate policy frameworks, attracting development bank funding, such as the funding the gentleman here hold the key to, so that we can leverage this mineral wealth into prosperity for our people and end decades of impoverishment by basically creating prosperity out of what we have already with industrial development on top of these minerals. Now, what's interesting, and this is just a slide to show that we have about everything, is that mineral only and then value chain model. We don't need to make batteries to add value. And I'll show this in my next slide. Value is what this we call future-facing minerals actually do. Again, these are not the minerals of yesterday. These are the minerals of tomorrow. They are not exported in the form of ore. Not one of them. Copper is copper concentrate. Lithium is lithium oxide. Rare earths are oxides. Aluminum doesn't come as bauxite. So ultimately, when you look at all of them, you have these two different models, but critical minerals are already coming out of Latin America in a value chain model. We haven't been aware of it. And the countries that have been prospering tremendously from it. We just need to look around our region. There are countries in our region where you have all nationalities prospering tremendously together. So what is this value chain model? Is to literally put a factory on top of a mine. Is it hard? Yes. The region is large. Mines are in the middle of regions that don't have sometimes infrastructure. But what kind of infrastructure you need once you put a factory? All you need is a road. Because once you put a factory, you diminish the volume of the material, of the ore, into industrialized oxide. It comes out by trucks. And this region has lots of roads because most transport is done by trucks. So the infrastructure is pretty much mostly there. We talk about perhaps improving roads. It's not like railroads in most cases. And this is the key to understanding and debunking myths, right? So again, the skill jobs, and I'll go beyond. My country is a nation of engineers. We have all chemical engineers, electrical engineers, process engineers we need. However, sometimes we don't have electricians, we don't have technicals, we don't have mechanics, we don't have specialists in these factories at mid-level management. So this is what we lack. Skill level jobs are not rocket scientists, literally. We need mechanics, specialized, I can give you a list of 20 jobs at technical level, high school level, that are lacking in places like my country and most countries, right? And that's what we need to invest. Now, once that happens, you're basically paying industrial wages. Industrial wages in my country are 7 times higher than minimum wage for a high school level graduate, which is phenomenal. When you go beyond, for a senior mechanic, it can get to 15 times minimum wage. Imagine the wealth that this creates and the prosperity it brings. So again, just to wrap up, with the foundations of transformation, and again, I'm not talking about batteries, I'm talking about oxides, first degree, second degree industrialization, we can unlock mineral wealth. The future-facing materials do not come out profitably as rock. There's no profit there. They come out as industrialized material. So strong institutions will basically be the guardians of sound policy. Regulatory stability. Again, we all love soccer. We're the common ball, right? Imagine starting to play a game, first half, these are the rules. Well, second half, well, now we can score by hand, we can kick the knees of the opponent. You can't change the rules of the game in the middle of the game. I think we know that from soccer. So that's what we say. Rules, sustainable rules, rules that stay. What's beautiful about LATAM, speaking of sustainable, historically, we have operated in most of these industries with the highest global standards of health and safety for employees. I visited factories all over Latin America, and I have not seen one with despicable practices that I've seen elsewhere in the world. So we are a region that already abides by high Western standards of operation. We've had unions historically, we have democratic societies, over decades. It's all here. And so the technology partnerships are perhaps one of the elements we ought to consider, because irrespectively of whether we're going to make the batteries or the very end downstream, in the industrialization, the winners are those who are investing in processing technology, which is exactly what we've done in our company, meaning lowering the cost of processing, which is where the value add comes from, is what actually enables increased industrial cash flow generation. And that is what the work is focus on midstream, focus on industrialization, and invest in processing technologies, which has been a much neglected area of technological investment. And here's the supply chain debunking the myths. When you look at the value creation, there is a fallacy that believes that all the wealth is in mining. No, it isn't. Mining is a difficult business. It's low margins, it's high volumes, and it's high capex, because you need railroads, you need ports. Think iron ore. In order to have a successful iron ore mine, you need to spend multiples of the investment on the mine into infrastructure. What is a mine? It's a hole in the ground. That's it. Now, where is the investment becomes higher? In the industry. However, if it's done with technologically advanced technique or practices or innovations, and if it is built to compete with the leaders, you actually generate high cash flow, meaning low cost, technologically advanced, in a low cost operating environment. And at that, our region also has a competitive advantage. We have abundance of renewable natural resources, which can be harnessed into solar power, wind power. Renewable energy in my country costs 2 cents of a kilowatt, 2 cents of a dollar per kilowatt hour, is the second cheapest in the world. That's a competitive advantage. So it becomes high cash flow generation. Then there's refining, which is the topic of many conversations. Well, refining is a bad business. It's very, very low margin. And in some industries, it's negative cash flow. And this is perhaps where public partnerships serve the supply chain, because private companies alone will not make it successfully here. And recently, we've had a wave of closures. For instance, a US company just closed their refinery in Australia. They don't move their refineries from China into the US. I'm just giving you an extreme example that is factual. It just demonstrates that a private company from a wealthy nation is also having these challenges. Imagine in Latin America, we'll have the same challenge. It will happen to us. So how are we going to tackle it? Perhaps public-private partnerships. Then you have batteries and cathode production. Again, another fallacy. Super margins. No. Battery is a scale business. The bigger the scale, the higher the margin. If you don't scale, you don't make any money. You just need to travel throughout Asia to find that out. So when you look at a battery business with double-digit margins, they have double-digit global share of the market, massive scale. The answer in batteries are scale. Hence, typically, they are built right next to their end markets. Now, for us here, we can supply them and supply them with the industries in the green and be very successful. Oxides is a pretty good start for the region. And then you have automakers, and again, it's a matter of national policy. Fantastic industries, a matter of what is the policy choice of each country. Good margins, again, if there is scale. So what we're trying to show is the opportunity is to participate in the supply chain. Whether or not we do the downstream, time will tell, but the supply chain is for the now, meaning globally integrated industrial supply chains based in Latin America and the Caribbean. The next stage for mineral producing regions is to basically build these industrial ecosystems around critical minerals. And I'll give an example. In my region, which was the second poorest region in my country, paradoxically in the second wealthiest state, for every job we generated, we create 13 ancillary jobs. So we have now, in a region of 45,000, 19,000 jobs directly or indirectly from this industry. Industrial ecosystems create more jobs than just mineral ecosystems. And this is, again, future-facing minerals are further suited for that. Again, private sector contribution and investor requirements, this is very straightforward. Investor-friendly environment and rule of law will unlock the region's potential. And development banks can catalyze this transformation. De-risking private investment by coming in to expand, enforcing sustainable standards aligned with the highest in the world, meaning traceability, and providing infrastructure financing where it's needed. Roads, basically. Through these mechanisms, we believe development banks can be instrumental to fully unlock the mineral wealth of the region. Investment has constraints. Again, regulatory uncertainty, slow and complex permitting, infrastructure gaps, all of this is up to the development banks to work with policymakers to bridge those gaps. And this is the role of regional development banks. It goes beyond just providing the capital. It has a key role in essentially advocating and supporting and helping create solid policy frameworks, state policies that literally last through administration. When I mean state, not state-owned, I mean union, policies of country policies that irrespective of administrations survive because they provide the stability. Partnerships are key. They will determine the future of the region. That's the legal certainty, essentially, meaning governments, private sector, development institutions, and communities. Communities want the prosperity. They need the prosperity. What's their alternative? So they want the jobs, they want the employment, especially in our region. We see this with our community. They want us. They are for us because we build a prosperity chain that actually leverages into some of our other actions which are related to what we call employment positions. And that's sort of the closing slide when we talk about what we built in Brazil. We created the 5th largest industrial mineral complex in the world for lithium out of 0. So far, solely with private capital. It was a Herculean endeavor. This company exists we incorporated a company in 2012. So 14 years, 8 years working on geological de-risking, and then the years subsequent testing technologies, and then building the industry that you see. This is 1 square kilometer of industrial park. The growth is tremendous, is essentially where development banks would come in. We want to double and then triple this industrial capacity because the geological risk was essentially tackled by us. And then an anecdote, I'm Brazilian, I got to Brazil, and I was discussing with our ministry that we would start geological analysis for lithium. I was told, no, there's no lithium in Brazil, don't bother. There's lithium in Chile, Argentina, in the lakes, don't bother. We like you, you're Brazilian, you're coming here to deploy capital, don't bother with lithium. Well, Brazil has the 5th largest industrial mineral complex in the world. We donated our results to the government, and everyone else came in and invested across nationalities. We have neighbors from all over the world, from Australia, from the UK, from China, from everywhere. Everybody's welcome. And so how did we do this? Just to wrap it up, we left our mark. We did it our way. Since the beginning, the fund initially was an impact investment fund. So we were set out to create a unique model of sustainability. And so we call it the quintuple zero model. It's zero tailings dam. We dry stack it. It was hard. It was really hard. Technology wasn't there. We developed it. We do not use drinking water. We use less water than a banana plantation, 15 times less water. So we reuse 100% of the water, and it's sewage water that comes in. We developed this technological process that does not have hazardous chemicals. We power it renewable electricity because that's one of the beauties of our country, is abundant and inexpensive. And then we have not had an accident for 890 days. Is the world's record. We sit at top of the global ranking for all metals and mining companies in the world, which differentiates Latin America. Latin America is like this, is high standards, is Western standards and low cost. What we need is you all, ladies and gentlemen, to basically support your respective countries in drawing good policy, stable policy, and welcome investors. Thank you, and it's an honor to be here.
Ana, thanks for those insightful remarks. We invite you to take a seat. Thank you again. And now we're going to invite the other panel members. Ahora completaremos el panel con los...
We are going to call on the following participants: Gustavo Santos Masili, who is the General Coordinator for Strategic Minerals and Energy Transition in the mining sector from the Ministry of Mines and Energy in Brazil. Julia Torreblanca, Vice President of Corporate Affairs from the Sociedad Minera Cerro Verde, Freeport, McMoran. And Roy Eriksson, Ambassador for Global Gateway in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Finland. And we have Suichi Hosada, Deputy Vice Minister of Finance for International Affairs of the Ministry of Finance, Japan. And Guillermo Foscarini, Managing Director and Chief of the Corporates Division for IDB Invest. And we have Tomas Serebrisky coming back as our moderator. Tomas, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Excellent presentation.
Thank
we
you.
all learned, I'm sure, a lot from that presentation. So let me start questions. Julia, I'll ask you the first question. You're part of a management team of the 6th largest copper mining in the world, Cerro Verde, that produces, I guess, more than 400,000 tons of copper a year. So how do you see in this, who was or the most important driver of investment for your company if you have to weigh to institutional, regulatory, de-risking instruments, infrastructure? What drives investment decisions in your company?
In general, addressing you today, but in general, not only Freeport, but most investors weigh the environment of a regulatory framework that a country can provide, also the certainty of the time frame that permits take, and as Freeport particularly, we acknowledge, not only because Anna told us, but that the world will be needing copper for the next years. And copper is one of the critical minerals required for energy transition. So we are cognizant not only of the importance of our products for the world, but also we recognize that Latin America is a key place for the growth that Freeport is considering. As such, Freeport is evaluating now and in process of implementing expansion in El Abra in Chile. It is an important operation that is programming to change from a leaching operation to building a concentrator, and for that one it needs water. So one of the considerations that Freeport uses in all the projects across the world is this project development evaluation tool in order to evaluate not only the technical feasibility of the project, but also the sustainability efforts and different characteristics of the project to make sure that we weigh in that sustainability and social factors before proceeding. So it's considering and complemented with the risk factor and risk evaluation of sustainability of the company, so that the project development review is integrated, and in all phases we can make sure that communities, title holders, and sustainable efforts are considered. Water for us is key. Infrastructure is also key, and energy as well. In the case of water, we acknowledge that in the case of El Abra, Freeport will be changing the water source from Ascotan, salt flats, to the Sal water plant to bring the water to the operation that will be enhanced and that will provide decades of growth, strengthen employment, more suppliers, and also Antofagasta's confirmation of the hub that it already is in order to provide more works for the community. In the case of Peru, Freeport has already applied not only for the growth that we have experienced in Cerro Verde since the year 2004, but also for the latest expansion, as Ana was mentioning. We are reusing treated sewage in our operations, and we have implemented what we call the virtuous circle of water that started back in 2002, adding water in the highlands for not only our operations, but for the whole community, for water for population and farming. We have donated a potable water plant for the city of Arequipa that serves 500,000 people today at home, 24 hours a day. And we have also cleaned the river called the Chili River, Chili with an I, the Chili River that today we have cleaned thanks to a wastewater treatment plant. So we process the sewage of the city of Arequipa. We take part of the water, reusing that treated sewage to produce copper for the world in a responsible manner, but we make sure that farmers can also export their products with a clean river, that the population have a better place and environment to enjoy, and tourism as well. So Freeport is committed to continue working not only in new projects, but also in development projects and expansion projects, applying sustainability practices, complying with copper and molybdenum marks that assure that our work is not only responsible, but sustainable, granting that copper that the world needs in the future. Thank you.
No, thank you. And just like a second question for you. How do you see investment in midstream from your perspective in Latin America? What's the likelihood that the region moves along the supply chain?
Actually, in the case of our country and in Peru, we are really interested in fostering responsible investments. As you know, Peru has a very good geological position. We offer 8 of the 17 critical minerals for the world, and we are also strategically located. We have good energy system most of the times, except we had just a problem with Camisea gas lately. But we also have a skilled workforce plus very good prices. We're very competitive. So what Peru is offering to the world is a good place to invest. We have a portfolio of over $63 billion of projects that are acknowledged and recognized, 63 projects for more than 65 billion. And we also are working in 88 different exploration projects. So in order to take any further decision, the country needs to work in an expedited and a more stable time framework, especially so that investors can acknowledge and recognize not only the risks that we do offer also, but also that the fact that we have to have a process for streamlining permitting that is becoming every time a little bit more complicated. We need to incorporate AI in those processes so that evaluations without losing the standards are faster. And also we have to work developing more suppliers because there are more mines demanding work. And especially we have to combat illegal mining because there have been an explosion of beneficiation plants lately, but we need to secure traceability of the mineral that is being treated by these illegal beneficiation plants in some cases, and also make sure that the illegal mining can provide safe conditions for their workers, comply with human rights, and be able to pay taxes as well, taxes that must be spent accordingly by mayors and regional governors, closing the breaches that the country has. We have lots of infrastructure needs, as you may acknowledge, not only roads, not only energy supply in some faraway areas, but we need the country to make sure that they emphasize that education, health, sanitation, and water supply must be first, so that responsible development and investments are also enjoying a social, stable climate wherever they operate. So those are the key issues that we must surpass in order to be able to have a better mining development in the country with all the advantages that the country has today. Thank you.
Super. Thank you very much. I'll move now to Gustavo. As was explained before, moving along the value chain requires a sound legal framework and a strategy or how to move forward. And this is a process that Brazil is advancing through a new national policy on strategy minerals. So can you share with us what are the core pillars of the new strategy? And by the way, thank you for allowing the IDB to work with you hand in hand in the development of that strategy.
Bom dia.
Hello, everyone. I'm really happy to be here to be able to talk after two great women speakers that reminded me that this is Women's Month. we just celebrated the International Women's Day, and so I wanted to congratulate the women and also say that there is a lot that we can do, not only in the mining sector, but in all sectors, so as to have a better world, not only for today's women, but for the women to come. Now, regarding our state policy on strategic or critical minerals, we're putting that together beginning with the comparative advantages offered by Brazil. Now, we heard a bit about the advantages of Peru just now, and Brazil, we too are blessed by nature. We have many different renewable sources. Something like 90% of our power grid is renewable. We also can do research and development. We have a robust infrastructure for transportation of minerals and to deliver energy to produce those minerals. We have a good relationship with several countries in the world. So Brazil is trying to maintain its position, and we also understand how important it is for us to share the challenges with other countries, to face them together. Also, we have another important thing that we've been talking about, and that is major reserves. That is something that was mentioned by Ana Cabral. So we have the reserves, and as Ana was saying, we have most of the critical minerals in our country. So that is a competitive advantage. Now, based on Brazil's framework, we began to try to understand what are the challenges we face. We have 30% of our country mapped geologically, and we understand that that is another challenge we need to deal with. We need to accelerate our geological mapping. Some countries have mapped 100% of their territory. We have done very little. So we're moving ahead at a speed that needs to be accelerated, but we need to hence accelerate our geological mapping. And although we do have major reserves of the reserves, a lot of the reserves are still underground because of the difficulty of producing, of processing those minerals. So we're beginning to look at what were the problems. And as Ana Cabral said, one of the difficulties is financing and also credit guarantees. We've had several seminars to move ahead on this, and for our policy, this is something of utmost importance, precisely to give companies an incentive to do business in Brazil. Now, another important thing, and that is something that we have been discussing in the G20, that was the Declaration of Leaders in Rio a few years ago. We saw that this was a concern not only of Brazil, but of all the southern countries, the global south. And that was processing, local processing. So we have to understand that it's very important for countries to be able to transform those minerals locally and also make certain that the energy transition that is so important for the world can also deliver social benefits. Now, in the case of Brazil, since often mining occurs far from the major hubs, it's important that we have to deliver development to the most needy areas of the country. So that is something that we're working on too, to expand, to widen the transformation. And that has to be done in a competitive way because doing a transition, we don't want that to be a dead end. So we need to assure competitiveness for this transformation in Brazil. So we're doing a lot of work so as to develop all of the chains that Brazil knows is important so that we can contribute to the energy transition in the world.
Strategy has a principle of mineral sovereignty. Why are you including that, and how is compatible with attracting foreign investment to the country?
Muito obrigado,
Thank you, Thomas, for that question. That is a very important matter for Brazil, and that is sovereignty. A lot of people discuss sovereignty, but they say, okay, what does the country expect? in terms of sovereignty? Are they trying to limit things, constrain operations? And that often happens in producing countries. They don't have the wherewithal to finance these projects, so resources have to come from the outside. And so often they say, okay, I want the mineral in XYZ characteristics. I'm going to transform the commodity in my own country. So here, the whole idea is to give a voice to producing countries so they can engage in a dialogue, so they can reach an agreement to benefit both parties, to make it a win-win, so that consumers should not always decide exactly what position in the value chain is going to be occupied by the producer. That's very important.
Mr. Hosoda, thank you very much for joining us all the way from Japan. And thank you for all the support that Japan has been giving to the work the IDB is doing in minerals. So, given the Japan's initiative on critical minerals in the context of the G20 presidency of 2023, that focuses on building resilient supply chains by promoting investment from advanced industries in mining, what implications can be drawn to Latin America based on Japan experience with critical minerals? What should the region do going forward?
Thank you, Thomas, and thank you for having me in this important session. And first of all, I very much appreciate the IDB's effort, and I very much welcome the effort to support the critical mineral supply chain. I think this topic is very timely and relevant. And Japan also has been supporting the critical mineral supply chain. So during the various international discussions, as Thomas mentioned, like among G7 countries, we recognize that ensuring the stable supply of the critical minerals and the building the resilient value chain are essential for economic stability for emerging countries. And for Japan and the other non-regional countries, strengthening the critical mineral value chain is very important to respond to the increasing global needs of critical minerals. So Japan has been supporting low, middle-income countries in advancing industry sophistication through technology transfer and capacity building, and in establishing the environmentally and socially responsible value chain. Japan has also placed a strong emphasis on not only on mining, but also on promoting investment in value-added processes such as refining and processing. Such diversified mining sector will help build a robust value chain and support more sustainable development in the region. So the Japan model also demonstrates the building resilient critical mineral value chain requires joint effort by the governments, MDBs, and the private sector. So we have been supporting low and middle income countries through so-called LIGHT, Resilient and Inclusive Supply Chain Enhancement Policy by the World Bank, which was launched under the Japan's G7 presidency in 2023. LIGHT has helped partner countries to play a greater role in the entire supply chain of clean energy products, from mining to component manufacturing and assembly. In addition to this, recently the other MDBs like an Asian Development Bank or the African Development Bank has also expressed their strong commitment to support critical mineral value chain. When MDBs can cooperate further to build a resilient value chain in each region, I think global value chain will become more robust and resilient. So Japan is willing to continue to work with partner countries and the MDBs to strengthen the roles in the global value chain for critical minerals and clean energy products, and support efforts that are helping create the quality jobs and drive sustainable economic growth. In this regard, I hope that an IDB group will further deepen the collaboration between the LAC and the non-regional countries, together with other MDBs and the private sectors, and accelerate the development of sustainable critical mineral ecosystem. To this end, we would like to strengthen our partnership with IDB groups through its bilateral trust fund and our bilateral agencies such as JBIC or JICA. Japan has a long-standing history of migration and exchange with LAC countries, including here in Paraguay. So based on such strong foundation of mutual trust, Japan will continue to be a trusted partner to support more legend and sustainable growth in this promising region. Thank you.
Great, no, thank you. And maybe just a follow-up. So what Latin America, in your view, need to do to position itself as a trusted partner to Japan in the development of reliable supply chains?
Thank you. Let me point out several key issues. Maybe first, strengthen the policy and regulatory stability. I think investors, and especially in the critical mineral sector, requires clear rules, particular permit process, or the strong environmental social safeguard. So such stable, transparent regulatory environment will make the region more attractive to responsible long-term investment from Japan or other advanced economies. Secondly, the developing value chain beyond extraction. Japan highly valued partnerships that extend refining, processing, and advancing manufacturing. By investing in midstream and downstream capabilities, LAC countries can capture greater value, diversify the economies, and deepen the industrial cooperation with Japan. Thirdly, institutional capacity building. Stronger institutions, like particularly in the procurement, environmental governance, or geological assessment, or project management, those reduce implementation risk and improve project quality. So Japan stands ready to support those efforts through training, knowledge sharing, and the Japan Trust Fund at the ADB. At the IDB. The fourth, the infrastructure logistic improvements. The resilient transport, energy, or digital infrastructure are indispensable to building a reliable value chains. So enhancing these areas aligns closely with Japan's long-standing commitment to quality infrastructure. Finally, fostering international partnership is essential. The critical minerals require cooperation that spans governments, MDBs, development financial institutions, and private sectors. So LAC countries' engagement with the IDB, Japan, and other partners will be central to creating a resilient and mutually beneficial value chain. So we're very much looking forward to working closely with LAC countries on those issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So I move to Ambassador Eriksson. Thank you for joining us. Finland is very well known in the mining sector. It has built a very good reputation for combining technological innovation, sustainability standards, and competitiveness in the mining sector. So what were the key drivers that allow Finland to make that shift, and gain this reputation?
Thank you, Thomas, and thank you for being on the panel, giving the European voice amongst the Latin American and Caribbean colleagues and my colleague from Japan. There is no simple way of saying what was the recipe for the success, but I think the pillars for our success story lies, first of all, we are a country or nation of engineers. We like to solve problems. And since we don't have really that many natural resources, we have invested heavily on education. And with education also on research and development, which has led to innovation. Another basis for this is we have very strict environmental laws. So in order for the companies to survive this kind of competition, they had to invest in new technology, invention, and use less energy. We don't have energy resources, and that way pushing the boundaries for being more competitive. Another reason is also having a good regulatory framework, like my colleagues here have said before. It gives you an vision of a certainty. It's a transparent way. Everybody knows the rules of the game. And last, but as an important reason for that is also that political stability, economical stability has creating an environment where investors know that if we go in and invest in these mines, we have 44 mines in Finland at the moment, there is certainty that there won't be any big upheavals or such. And that has created a good knowledge on this mining sector. I was told that of all global mines that using extraction technology, a third comes from Finland. And then when we go over to processing the minerals, 80% of that technology comes from Finland. So we are really there at the cutting edge, providing solutions. And a lot of our companies are already present here in Latin America. And I know that there are even further plans of being engaged even more in the future.
Great. And taking exactly from your last point, how Latin America can do more or work better with Finnish firms to be more productive, to benefit from the technological cutting edge that you have.
Well, I will go back to the image of the mining sector. It has suffered from a kind of a bad image, that it's polluting, it's not taking into consideration environmental issues, but that is gone. We are now very modern and taking into consideration this holistic view. We just last year published our mineral strategy, which is on a holistic way and taking into consideration all the environmental and social issues, but also that you have to be engaged with the local people early on so that you get the public acceptance. Mm-hmm. And the mining jobs that come there should bring wealth to the local people. We also quite often bring educational aspects into play so that it's a win-win, that the locals win, the company wins, and also the supply chains get what is needed. So it's this kind of view that you take everything into consideration already from the start. And one important thing also is that you have to have an exit plan. You open a mine, but you need to also know what happens when you close it so that you bring it in the full circle. And circularity is something that is coming even more into the mining sector. You have to think about using all the minerals in the best possible way so that you don't have to necessarily open new mines.
Super. No, thank you very much. Guillermo, now I move to you. IDB Invest, the board approved a $100 million loan in September 2025 to develop, construct, and operate the greenfield Salar del Rincón in the province of Salta in Argentina. So if you could share what additionality did IDB Invest bring to the deal that made it possible?
Thank you, Tomás, and thank you for the invitation to be on the panel. It's a real pleasure. Some of you may have seen on the news that this week on Tuesday, there was an announcement that project that Tomás was mentioning, the Rincón project, was actually signed and executed on Tuesday. So it's already an ongoing project. Let me start by saying that mining projects are probably the most difficult undertakings in the productive sector. Mining projects involve normally greenfield projects in remote areas under adverse weather conditions, and beyond the intrinsic technical difficulties of exploration and production and extraction and processing, you have many externalities that are important for the project to be successful. And these externalities include investing in public and private infrastructure, because you're talking about very remote areas where there are very limited infrastructure and services. And we're talking about roads, we're talking about energy, we're talking about water, but we're also talking about schools and hospitals, and all the infrastructure that the project needs to be successful. So, and then these projects are very capital intensive and also require long-term financing from multiple sources. So mining is all about partnerships. And these partnerships have to be done with like-minded stakeholders. So going into the specifics of the Rincón project that was done, is carried out and led by Rio Tinto. This is a transformative project in Argentina that will basically increase by 50% the lithium exports of the country, and has the potential to contribute up to 10% of the GDP of Salta, of the province of Salta. So it's a major project. It's a $2.6 billion project that is being carried out. And the way we got involved is by providing financial additionality, by providing the tenors and the grace periods that the project requires. Normally, like any mining company would tap into different type of resources, different sources of funds, from the capital markets to banking, to institutional investors, and also to DFIs, because DFIs, such as IDB Invest, can provide the tenors, can provide the grace period, the tailoring of the financing that is required for the project to ensure that it will be successful. But in addition to the terms and conditions of the loan, we also provide what we call non-financial additionality, because we ensure and we work with the company to ensure that the best environmental and social practices are established in the project, because projects to be successful require communities to also see the benefits, to also be involved and participate in the project. So we make sure that the best environmental and social practices are established in the project. And in that particular case, we also worked with technical assistance to Rio Tinto and to Rincón specifically to develop an engagement strategy with the supply chain, with an angle on gender and gender-based violence in the communities and in the surroundings.
Super, thank you. And just in a couple of minutes, IDB Invest is planning to scale up the work on critical minerals. What's next? Can you share what your plans are?
As part of IDB Invest went through a capitalization a couple of years ago. That basically, so we are now in the middle of the growth phase. This capitalization and the new vision for our engagement basically calls for taking on more risks and focus on the most pressing development challenges of the region. Mining is probably one of the largest opportunities that the region has. You know, everybody knows the demand for energy that technology, AI, energy transition is bringing to the world, and the challenges and the resources that are needed to support that transition. And Latin America and the Caribbean happen to have those resources that the world needs. So we are scaling up significantly our involvement in the region and in this particular sector, working hand in hand with the public and private intervention. We are looking at this sector based on what I mentioned before in a holistic way, and working to support responsible investments in the region, so that the region, here the opportunity is that the region is able to capture the value and the development impact that this opportunity has. And we're working hand in hand on the public and private to be able to be that bridge that can connect the producing countries with the end users and the investors, so that this sector can scale up and be sustainable.
Super, thank you. Anna, I'll take a few things that were mentioned. Ambassador Erickson mentioned the reputation of the mining sector that should change because the mining industry or sector changed a lot. Julia also mentioned how water treatment is improving, or the use of water, desalinization. And, last week I was in PDAC, in the largest mining conference, and several countries and companies complained about this bad reputation of a mining sector, in particular related to water, saying that, and the argument is that you are putting a lot of focus on mining, while most of the sector that uses water the most is agriculture, in a rate of 10-to-1 compared to mining. So, and I understand that, and you mentioned it in your presentation, that Sigma Lithium is using zero drinking water. So, how you did it, what's your opinion on this thought?
It's processing technology, and it goes back to the core of the investment. How did that happen? Well, we made a few decisions that were geared to the long term that earned us actually a very, let's say, difficult reputation in capital markets. I mean, just to put in perspective, we voluntarily created a two-pit operation to preserve the water creek that was the water conduit for drinking water for the community. So it isn't a surprise for us that when in a town of 50,000, there's a protest, 32 people show up from out of town. It cost us. We run a high strip two-pit operation because we preserved the drinking water creek. Now, then what? Where is your water coming from? It's a wet process. We built a 7-kilometer water pipeline for 3 lines. We just have 1 line that cost us a double digits of millions of dollars. And I can give you the exact number, $22 million, unexpected, because the constructions ran over because of permitting. That pipeline goes from the permanent river to our property. Second, we had a nasty surprise. That river was actually a sewage, open-air sewage river. There were solid fecal residues in the river. So we had to build a water treatment station. So when I say we use sewage water, it is sewage water. There's floating solid fecal residues in the river that we thought could be a great source of water that's 8 kilometers away. So we had to invest another $12 million in a sewage treatment station to make that water suitable for high-tech industrial usage. So it cost us in infrastructure. So then that water became expensive because we have to build infrastructure and we had to build inbound water sewage treatment station. So what did we do? More technology for reutilization of 100% of that expensive water. So the result is an operation that as it dry stack, it separates the water and reuses the water into the plant. The number final is we use 30 cubic meters of water, which is a fifth of our water license, which is 15 times less of a banana plantation, which is the common form of agriculture in the region. But again, the answer, technology, investments, processing. We took the time and we deployed the capital to solve that conundrum. So it's a key point. Now, would that have been better sold by a partnership with a development bank? Absolutely. But at the time, we had to take the risk. And that's my point. The initial risk-taking is always private capital. Innovation is private capital. And now that it's built, what we want to do is scale. Let's build 3 of those because it is the most sustainable lithium factory for oxides in the world. Let's just replicate this. And this is, again, when the development banking sector comes along, because the technological risk we undertook as venture capital investors.
Thank you. So we're very close. We have 1 minute, but I'll ask for those that want to take it, how do you see the mining sector in 10 years? Maybe take 10 seconds each.
Me? Okay. Yes, continuing working with public-private partnerships, because companies need the government, need the social society, and the acceptance in order to be sustainable.
Anybody else?
Powering the future. Essentially, the world needs such large amounts of energy, both to electrify the global south and to power our, artificial intelligence future, that mining now is part of the energy dialogue. All energy, all kinds of energy, not just fossil fuels, but all kinds of energy, nuclear, renewable, what have you. And once you move away from essentially the traditional sources of energy, you do need mining.
Super.
May I? Okay. Well, in the future, I see the mining as something that is really related to technology, sustainability, low cost and low carbon emission, and something that brings the population a better living and better things for the world so that we can build. Thank you.
Excellent.
And I see that it is part of the green transition, and it creates a lot of sustainable, decent jobs.
I think the mining sector will be could be a huge potential for the LAC country. So we're very much willing to cooperate in the sector.
I think mining is probably the largest development opportunity for the region in multiple generations.
Super. Thank you very much. It was a great panel. And a round of applause for the fantastic presentation. So stay for the next panel that will be very, very good on regional integration.
Muchísimas gracias a todos por este excelente.
Thank you all very much for this fantastic panel. We thank those of you who are with us in the room, and also those who are following the live stream. We remind everyone that you can join the conversation through social media. You can use the hashtags IDB Group Meetings, or in Spanish, Reuniones Grupo BID. As the moderator just said, we will very soon be discussing intra-regional trade. The title of the seminar is Reimagining Regional Integration.
Join us in Paraguay on March 11 to 14 for our most important gathering, the IDB Group's annual meeting. Last year was the IDB Group's record year, with the highest ever level of $35 billion in financing, while strengthening the quality of our projects and processes, and therefore delivering impact. This led us to a year of record recognition, including Multilateral Development Bank of the Year. Now, we need to build on that. The IDB Group will focus on growth, has foundation for development, including private sector network, critical minerals, supply chains, supporting countries in economic transition, and advancing integration